Can you tell us who that person was and how you got connected with them?
So basically, that person was the president of a group called Consumers Korea.
Hmm.
So in Korea, basically, there's a lot of different consumers organizations. So they're basically groups that advocate for the consumers in the economy. And so that's why I thought it would be most appropriate to interview this person because obviously I was looking at the economy and a massive part of that is looking at the consumers and their perspective. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and so that's why I think I um, was able to connect with this particular person for this interview, for that topic.
Hmm. Made it a good fit. Can you talk a little bit about, so stepping back from the product or the video that you made, your process took many months, right? And oftentimes you'll talk to students after completing the personal project, and so many skills were practiced, right? Everything from emailing people you wanted to talk to finding time to get certain amounts of research done before you met with them, to the editing and the post production of your content, right? Um, can you talk a bit about the skills you think you were able to practice and where you saw growth in yourself, where you saw growth in your own skills?
Yes, I think if I had to pick kind of the two main skills that I really focused on and developed were firstly communication skills. Obviously, I had to contact a lot of different people, talk to a lot of people, and then the interviews themselves are ways of communication and
Mm-hmm.
communicating with people. So I think definitely with communication, obviously I already had a lot of experience in terms of emailing people or talking to them personally. But with the format of interviews was something that I wasn't so familiar with, just
Right.
because it's not something that we get a lot of opportunities to do at school or outside of school as well. So that was something that definitely I kind of had to get used to and had to experience and practice. So thinking of what questions would be the most appropriate for that particular interview, how I can ask it, and also sometimes as you're doing the interview, you can also think of new questions that might be more relevant, that might be more helpful to the discussion. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's just a skill that I think I developed as I was progressing um,
Yeah.
through the interviews. And the second skill I think was the more technological aspect of actually editing the videos, figuring out how to work with YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
which was the platform that I used because I don't normally use YouTube a lot. I don't upload a lot of videos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so creating my own channel, finding all of the different technical details. I also wanted to make my videos look as formal as possible. So it wasn't just a video of an interview. It actually had like an introduction
Mm-hmm.
and um, the outro is a word that I learned as I was doing this process as well. So I had to do a lot of research on those technical details. And so I think those two fields are kind of the ways that I improved in the most.
Yeah, one is very interpersonal and one is very
Yeah.
alone and isolated, right? How do you see you taking those communication skills into the future? How do you think they're going to help you? Let's start with the communication. How will it help you in the future?
Yes. So I think obvious communication, I personally think is one of the most important skills just in your everyday life because you are always communicating with different people as you're interacting with them. And I think to focus specifically on the format of interviews,
Mm-hmm.
I think just because this is something that I'm interested in is social issues and topics. Oftentimes, even as I'm talking with my peers or other friends, colleagues, not colleagues, but other students,
Yeah, yeah.
um, uh, you do ask these kind of questions. You get into that brain setting of
Mm-hmm.
um, what you would be thinking if you were in an interview. And so I think that's something that I found very interesting was oftentimes as I talk with different people, I find myself in a position where I'm like, oh, it feels like I'm interviewing this person. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that skill kind of can carry over into those kind of everyday discussions that I'm having with other people about these topics that I'm interested in. And
Yeah.
obviously, I think that's going to increase as time passes by and as I meet more people. Maybe if I go abroad, for example, after I graduate, I'm going to be meeting a lot more people with much more diverse perspectives. So I think that's really where this skill is going to come into play.
Do you feel like it made you more courageous? Did you overcome any fears regarding talking to brand new people, or was that something that wasn't as challenging?
I think I think one of the fears that I did have was not so much about the actual interviews themselves, but with regards to presenting it to an audience.
Yep.
I have done a lot of presentations before to multiple different audiences, whether that's for a school project, for example, or a speech or something like that. But then, or school production, for example, I've also done a lot of school productions, but um, they're always, in those examples, they're always real life audiences that I can actually see and interact with.
Yeah,
And
you get that
they are,
energy.
yeah, and they're also
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes people that I know because they're usually my friends or other members of our school community.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because in this particular case, I was opening it to the audience was basically the internet. Although it was with a primary target audience of other students, I was still releasing it to to basically the entire world, and so that's something that I thought that I
Right.
was a bit concerned about, especially during the beginning stages of this project. But as I went on, I think I kind of got used to it, and I also realized that it's not really that difficult or that scary as I had originally thought.
Yeah. What are your hopes for your channel going forward? You've made content, you've put it into the world. What do you hope for it?
So what I'm hoping to be able to do
Mm-hmm.
is basically to continue creating videos for the channel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably I won't be able to upload as frequently as I have been doing just because there are going to be a lot of other projects that I need to do. And as I move up um, into my junior year, there's going to be a lot of school assignments that I also need to look into. But just because this is something that I am very interested in, which is why I chose it for my personal project. So it is something that I really want to continue doing. And something that I thought that I wasn't able to do as much as part of my personal project was interacting with my audience and
Mm-hmm.
then also creating a more diverse range of videos and interviews. So a lot of the times, basically all of my most of my interview videos were just one-on-one interviews. But then I
Right.
was also hoping to maybe be able to get more than one interviewee per video, to
Sure.
have like a discussion or
Sure.
to actually have like a live stream event, for instance. Um, so all of those things I would still like to do if I have time and if I can figure out the technical details.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think moving forward is something I hope to do.
Yeah, and maybe in a post-COVID world, we can
Yeah.
really change up the way we think about those discussions and how they take place. My last question for you is like a piece of advice. Um, Talking to yourself 9 months ago or talking to another kid, what kind of advice would you give to someone undertaking the personal project? Now that you've gone through it, what's some advice you would give?
I think, and this is an advice that I actually got from, I think, one of the teachers or one of the upperclassmen as well, um, is really doing a project that you're actually passionate about, that you're actually interested in.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I really realized during my process um, trying to do the personal project is oftentimes, especially with all the other summatives and the other projects that you need to do, you kind of um, start to wonder why you have to do this, and you might reach like a slump or a roadblock in the
Yeah.
process where you just don't really know how you can move forward. And
Yeah.
then, so in those cases, what motivates you to continue and to push forward is if you're actually interested in the topic, if you're actually passionate about it.
Sure.
So I think for me to kind of connect it to a personal example,
Yeah.
this happened to me when I was trying to figure out the technical details of video editing.
Yeah.
Um, that was just something that I was very unfamiliar with and that I found very difficult to start. Um, and so, but then because I was interested in these topics and because I wanted to create that final product of having just a bunch of videos about these social topics, and that's kind of what I envisioned. And
Yeah.
so I decided, even though I'm going through this challenge right now, that it's going to kind of pay off at the end. And so, kind of reaching for that goal, that's how I was able to move forward. So, that's the advice I would give to all of the people who are going to be undertaking the personal project in the future is choose something that you're actually interested in, and that um, the project itself can be a motivation instead of any other external factors.
Mm, really good point. And so it's not a perfect smooth water, right? The
Yeah,
water is a little stormy along the way, but the passion is really what carries the whole
yes,
thing through. Good, great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's fair to say, if you don't have a passion, you really shouldn't begin, right? Maybe
yeah,
take some time to do an inventory of what you're actually caring about before you embark on this.
yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sihun, for letting us switch roles. Thanks for
Thank you.
inviting me. And I am so glad we got to talk today.
Thank you, Miss Sam. Thank you for interviewing and thank you for joining.
You're so welcome.